One Gospel, version 2, part 121, the trial before the high priest and Sanhedrin. Matthew 26:57 through 27:2, Mark 14:53 to 15:1, Luke 22:54 through 23:1, John 18:12b through 27. And those who had laid hold of Yeshua took him, and led Yeshua away, and brought him to Anon first. For he was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, who was the high priest that year. Now it was Caiaphas who advised the Yehud that it was expedient for one man to die for the people. And all the chief priests, and the elders, and the scribes were assembled with him. And Shimon Kepha followed Yeshua at a distance, and so did another disciple. That disciple was known to the high priest, and he entered with Yeshua into the courtyard of the high priest. But Kepha stood at the door outside. Then that other disciple, who was known to the high priest, went out and spoke to the female doorkeeper, and brought in Kepha to the inside of the courtyard of the high priest. Then the servant girl doorkeeper said to Kepha, "Are you not also one of this man's disciples?" He said, "I am not." And the slaves and servants, who had kindled a fire of coals in the middle of the courtyard because it was cold, stood there and sat down together and warmed themselves. And Kepha went inside and stood with them. And Kepha sat down with the servants and warmed himself at the fire to see the end. The high priest then asked Yeshua concerning his disciples and concerning his teaching. Yeshua answered him, "I spoke freely to the world. I always taught in a synagogue and in the temple, where the Yehud always come together. And in secret I have said nothing. Why do you ask me? Ask those who have heard me what I said to them. Behold, they know what I said." And when he had said these things, one of the servants standing by struck Yeshua with the palm of his hand, saying, "Do you answer the high priest like that?" Yeshua answered him, "If I have spoken evil, testify concerning the evil. But if well, why do you smite me?" Anon then sent him bound to Caiaphas, the high priest. And the chief priests and the elders and all the Sanhedrin sought false testimony against Yeshua to put him to death. And they found none. And though many false witnesses came forward, they found none. For many bore false testimony against him, but their testimonies were not alike. And later, 2 false witnesses arose and came forward and bore false testimony against him, saying, "We heard this one say, 'I am able to and will destroy this temple of God made with hands, and by 3 days I will build another made without hands.' But neither in this matter was their testimony alike." And the high priest arose in the midst and asked Yeshua, saying to him, "Do you answer with nothing? What do these testify against you?" And Yeshua kept silent and did not answer anything. And again the high priest answered and asked him and said to him, "I adjure by the living God that you tell us whether you are the Messiah, the Son of the blessed God." And Yeshua said to him, "I am. You have said it, and nevertheless I say to you, hereafter you shall see the Son of Man sitting by the right hand of the power and coming with the clouds of the heaven." And then the high priest tore his garments and said, "He has spoken blasphemy. What further need do we have of witnesses? Behold, now you have heard his blasphemy. What do you think?" And they all condemned him. They answered and said, "He is deserving of death." And then some began to spit on his face, and to cover his face, and to beat him. And the servants struck him with the palms of their hands and said to him, "Prophesy to us, Messiah. Who is he who struck you?" And as Kepha was outside and sat down in the courtyard, Shimon Kepha stood and warmed himself. And one of the servant girls of the high priest came to him, and when she saw Kepha as he sat warming himself by the fire, she earnestly looked at him and said, and you were also with Yeshua of Nazareth of the Galilee? Then they said to him, Are you not also one of his disciples? And he denied it before all, and said, I am not. Woman, I do not know him, neither do I understand what you're saying. And he went outside into the forecourt to the gateway, and a rooster crowed. And after a little while, another female, the servant girl, saw him again, and began to say to those who stood by there, This one is also one of them, with Yeshua of Nazareth. And again he denied it with an oath. Kepha said, Man, I am not. I do not know the man. And a little later, after about an hour had passed, those who stood by came and said again to Kepha, Surely you are also one of them, for you are also from the Galilee, and your speech is alike and makes you manifest. Another confidently affirmed, saying, Truly this one was also with him, for he is from the Galilee. One of the servants of the high priest, a relative of him whose ear Kepha cut off, said, Did I not see you in the garden with him? And Kepha then denied again. He began to curse and to swear and said, Man, I do not know what you're saying or this man of whom you speak. And immediately while he was speaking, a rooster crowed a second time. And the Lord turned and looked at Kepha. And Kepha remembered the word of Yeshua, how he had said to him, Before a rooster crows twice, you shall deny me 3 times. And when he thought about it, Kepha went out and wept bitterly. And the men who held Yeshua mocked him and beat him. And when they had blindfolded him, they struck him on the face and asked him, saying, Prophesy, who is it that struck you? And they blasphemously spoke many other things against him. And immediately, when the morning came, as soon as it was day, the elders of the people, both all the chief priests and the scribes, gathered together and led him into their Sanhedrin, and held a consultation with the elders and scribes and the whole Sanhedrin against Yeshua, so as to put him to death, saying, If you are the Messiah, tell us. But he said to them, If I tell you, you will by no means believe. And if I also ask you, you will by no means answer me or let me go. Hereafter the Son of Man shall sit on the right hand of the power of God. And they all said, Are you the Son of God then? And he said to them, You say it, because I am. And they said, What further testimony do we need? For we ourselves have heard it from his own mouth. And the whole multitude of them arose, and when they had bound Yeshua, they led him away and delivered him to Pontius Pilate the governor.